Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to OCD Real Talk. We're here once again to talk about important things, important OCD things. But before we go on, please subscribe to the channel and please let us know if you have any recommendations for topics that you want us to cover in this format, in a chat format, because obviously it becomes a different dynamic conversation when it's like people talking collectively. Um, so what we wanted to talk about was feeling hopeless and lonely on the OCD recovery journey, which the four of us, we have not experienced that at all at any moment. We've always gone through it with full of hope, not feeling alone at all. But no, of course, we've been through that, and every OCD goes through that because it is an isolating experience. It is just the nature of the disorder. And you've heard all of us almost talk about that on our individual videos as well. Harley, since you are here after a while, I will start with you.
Yes.
By the way, your camera quality is really good today. I don't know if you've changed your
I
phone or
think
something.
I think it's just because I've like blurred a setting on here where I've like blurred the background. It's something that you do. You've blurred the background,
Yeah,
and then I don't
but
know.
but
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
what I've
know.
done. I don't
You
know if it.
you you look very clear as well. So I mean, maybe it might be the
Oh,
placebo
okay.
effect of the blur. But anyway, go ahead. So
I mean,
um, hmm,
um. So yeah, I felt in terms of feeling lonely and hopeless. I felt very lonely and hopeless, from the start towards the start of my journey because like none of my family really had OCD. None of my friends that I know of had OCD. So in terms of that aspect, like I definitely felt alone in that, and especially not knowing what OCD was at the start of my journey, like that, not knowing what you're going through and what you're dealing with, it does feel very lonely. You feel very isolated in yourself because you feel like it's a battle within. You feel like you're the only one going through it. It's a battle on your own. And it wasn't until I found, not from a reassurance standpoint, but it wasn't until I found people in OCD groups. This was way before I even found this OCD group. Facebook groups that were going through the same with people who were going through the same thing as me. That really helped me come out of that lonely place because it was kind of like a eureka moment where I was like, oh wow, I found people who were going through the same thing as me. I'm not the only one dealing with this. This is actually a real thing. Um, but yeah, going back to what I said about not knowing what it was, that was a really hard thing because, like I said, I felt very isolated. I felt very just on my own, not really knowing who to speak to, fear of being judged because I was sort of around so many people who were coming across as like they had no problems in life. And before OCD got severe, I was a very laid back person. I didn't really have really like a care in the world, really, if you could say. And then when it hit, it was like I felt as if like I've done something wrong to have made this happen. Like what went wrong? Like maybe I've got to try and go back and figure out what caused this so I can not make it go any further. But yeah, I felt very alone and
and
very
I
isolated. It
think
was a
it's
very
it's kind of funny as well because when you find other people who have OCD, it's almost like, yes, there are other people suffering as well. Like it's a
exactly.
happy
Yeah.
moment that there are other sufferers as well. Of course, you don't wish it
Mm,
on anyone, but it's
mm,
a joyous moment almost that because I
yeah.
think that's the thing that I struggled with the most, that it felt very isolating because I mean, I didn't fully understand it myself. And I felt like the more I
Mhm.
tried to explain it to people, the more isolated I felt. And so it came to a point where
Yeah.
it was like I had to come to terms with the fact that no matter how much I tried to explain it to someone, no one will fully understand it because they don't experience it. And so because I didn't have
Exactly.
any
Yeah.
other OCD community and whatnot, I felt like I was the only one who knew and understood my thoughts. There was nobody else in my
Mhm.
shoes at all. And that was so,
I,
that was bad. That was a bad moment and
yeah.
it was a really hard pill to swallow at the moment.
I felt like I could never do it justice, like what you're saying there, Mel. I felt like I could never sort of explain it, especially to a non-OCD sufferer, and that is why I felt so alone. Because you can say, "Yeah, I'm getting these thoughts I don't want," but then people go, "Okay, well, just ignore them." And it's just like you're like, "No, you don't understand. You don't understand
Mm,
that action." And I feel so guilty. I can't even concentrate. You don't understand that. And then when I then found this community, it just felt like such a big weight off my shoulders. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not
mm,
alone. I'm really not alone. You've got people suffering with the taboo related themes. Because I remember with POCD, I just felt so alone. I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone. I felt like I couldn't even talk to a therapist, a doctor, because I thought I'd be judged. I talk about it a lot that when I actually did open up about some of the thoughts I was getting, I was then replaying the phone call and taking notes, noting down what they said, just to make sure they didn't judge me or say I was a bad person. They were going to call the police, report me or whatever. So I was so scared to talk about it, and that's because I felt so alone, so isolated, so helpless. And I think that's the issue with the taboo theme, doesn't it? And that's why it latches to it, because it knows you're going to feel where you can't speak to anyone. You feel like even if you mention the thought or a false memory or real event in the past, and that's it. You're going to go to jail, you're going to go to prison, and everyone's going to hate you. So hence why it really gets in on those sticky themes.
Elliot.
Yeah. Sorry, after. Yeah, no, it's just so confusing as well. Like I remember like when I was really early on suffering in my journey, and I was like sat in a football stadium with like 40,000 people, and I remember thinking, God, like I must be the only person who's suffering with OCD here. Like all the thoughts, all the worries, all the obsessions, all the ruminations. So obviously I had really bad HOCD, and like I just I had like an inkling there was something wrong with me, but because it just felt so real, like I automatically just jumped to the conclusion of the worst case scenario that I was gay, and then I almost tried to like accept that in a way. And obviously it was just so confusing because that still wasn't getting me better. I was seeing a therapist who was giving me CBT, and she was like, "Oh yeah, you might just have to accept that you are gay." And then it was just so confusing, and I just felt so alone, and like I'd go to bed just like wondering like what is my life, like how am I ever going to get out of this? And when I came across OCD recovery, not in a reassurance way, like Harley said, it was really refreshing. But yeah, it's lonely, confusing, and hopefully with the community here now, you don't really feel as lonely and whatever as we may have done in the early part of our journey. But yeah, lonely, confused, etc. All of those things.
I
And
relate to that.
I think exactly what Sam said as well. Those are the exact words that I've always used to describe that experience. I think when I joined the WhatsApp group the very first time and I started to talk to other people from that group, it genuinely felt like there was a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. It was like, I don't know, I felt like 30% of my worries were lifted I just, because that stress of trying to explain your fears and your thoughts to someone was like that just went away. I could just talk about my thoughts without having to say 200 extra words to further explain what I said. And it was liberating, it was calming, and yeah, it just felt great to just not like be like, no, but I can't just snap out of it. It's not that easy. It's not that case. So yeah.
That's the thing though, like if that's what really annoyed me as well when I first started talking to people about it, because the one thing people would say is, "Oh, just stop thinking about it, just snap out of it." And then you try and like say to them like, "Oh, well, if I could snap out of it, I would." Like and then it's almost if like they feel like you're doing it on purpose, almost like you're doing it to yourself, and it's not the case. Then you get frustrated trying to explain it to them, and then it's just like an endless cycle of like trying to explain like, no, this is what's happening, like you don't understand, then like it causes like confrontation really, because you're trying to get your point across, they're trying to get theirs, and it's just like you're just clashing constantly all the time. So it's an endless cycle to go down and trying to get your point across.
Elliot, it's really interesting that point you said about when you was at a football match.
Yeah.
And you're looking around. I remember when I was about 5 years ago, I was really suffering, like so consumed with guilt. And I was at a cricket match, and it was like a packed cricket match. It was rammed. It was really difficult to get a ticket, and I got a ticket.
Yeah.
And I was looking around, and I was trying to watch cricket, but it just wasn't going in because my mind was elsewhere. I was ruminating about something in the past, and I was like, does anyone like have this? Like, is it just me that? Why is not everyone else sat here thinking about something 10 years ago or 5 years ago? And you see everyone having a really good time, everyone having a laugh. And I felt like I couldn't have the ability to have a conversation with someone, or if I could, it would be such a fake, laughter. I just felt like I wasn't there. And that really hit home, seeing that many people. So you're talking about 50, 60,000 people. And you're just there, you just feel so isolated in that moment. And I think that was the turning point. I realized, okay, well, obviously meeting the community was a turning point, but realizing that I am alone. Well, it feels like you are alone, but you're thinking about who's going to get you out, who's going to get me out of this. And
Yeah,
straight away, do you know what I mean? So it's like
yeah,
that.
completely.
Although I'm suffering, but only me, like no one else is going to understand me. Is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say. It's not like I can go, well, you sort of realize you're suffering with an illness, with a disorder, and only you can get yourself out of that. And obviously, that's when comes meeting the community. But yeah, I can really relate to those points, Elliot, when you're in like a busy public event and you can't quite see how other people
yeah,
are enjoying
and
themselves.
yeah, I think that's key, and like it just gave me like the victim mindset, you know, suffering with OCD. It wasn't just with that area of my life; it was in other areas. So, for example, I just felt like really, really sorry for myself, and it's very easy to do. And like I thought, well, oh, I've got OCD. Why can't I have a good career? Why can't I have good relationships? Why can't I have this? Why can't I have that? And yeah, it just got me into a massive victim mindset, and that's actually sort of took a long time to sort of bring down. And you know, when you have thoughts about why me when you're on the recovery journey, it's just not gonna help you. And like it's so easy to get into that, and I was really, really guilty of doing that. But yeah, you got to think like, why not me? Like, why shouldn't that happen to you? You know, there's other people suffering with other sort of bad things, like, you know, broken legs and cancer and all those sorts of things. And it just is what it is. It's quite difficult to accept, but you know, that's where the unconditional self-acceptance comes in. Yeah, but
Elliot, I have a question for you. Like, so in your, like with you, the worst case scenario, for example, was that I'm like going to be gay and I'm going to lose my identity of who I've known myself to be and things like that, right?
yeah,
Um, did you also feel like at some point where it was like, okay, fine, maybe I can accept I'm gay, but did you also, was there also a part of you that was like, I just wish at least, even if I was accepting, if I was on this journey to accept myself as a gay person, at least I wish it wasn't as conflict ridden. I wish it was as easy as it is for some other people that they just realize they're gay and they, come to terms with it.
yeah. It was really hard to accept for me, like it because obviously it feels so real. It just felt like such a shock. And like for whatever reason, I just couldn't in the initial stages of suffering with HOCD, I just couldn't accept it. I was playing it off. I was like, no, this isn't true, doing everything that I could to disprove it. You know, I was being very compulsive. I was double checking that like I felt disgust towards like being homosexual, like all that sort of thing. And I couldn't really accept it. But then like, I think as time goes on and you sort of lean into the recovery journey, and I came across OCD recovery, you just sort of accept it. um you got to look at like why certain things shouldn't happen, like so in my case, why should I not be gay? Or you know, maybe if you had sensory motor, like why should I not notice my sensations for the rest of my life? Or why should I not harm someone? I think it's good to look at it like that. But yeah, in the initial stages I wasn't very accepting towards it at all. I was very rigid, black and white, because of my upbringing, because of where I come from. I was like, I can't be like this. I need to be how I think I am. And that just fueled the cycle in the end. You know, that was just completely playing into OCD's hands. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say in the
Um,
initial stages, I was really accepting. Yeah.
And I think what the other thing I also want to look at, like today with you guys, is because this is a question that we get very often, and people don't know how to deal with that, is when it's like, what do you do when you're feeling hopeless? How do you deal with feelings of hopelessness? Like in a moment where you're feeling like you're completely stuck, there's no hope for you, you won't ever get better, you won't ever recover, the thoughts won't ever go away. In a moment of feeling hopeless, what would you guys say one should do?
Carry on, carry on regardless. You can't try and force hope. You can't try and look for hope. You can read recovery stories. You can ask for help with other OCD sufferers. You can look at, other people with illnesses, diseases, other mental health disorders. But you can't go, right, I need to feel hope to recover, or I need to feel hope to live life. You just have to bring it for the ride. You have to do whatever you're going to do regardless. I remember feeling hopeless so many times along my journey, setback after setback, thinking, fucking hell, I'm never going to recover. And then I just had to just keep pushing on, because if I waited for that hope to come, it would have just never come. OCD knows that. It's going to dig its heels in. So don't force feeling hopeful.
Yeah.
I think also talking to people helps as well. Like make sure you are able to talk to someone, not from a reassurance standpoint, but just be able to feel comfortable expressing how you feel. Because I think like a lot of people don't want to talk about express their feelings much because they don't want to come across as weak. And I think talking about how you feel really helps, because it does help take a weight off your shoulders. Not necessarily that then the person that you're confined in can't take away what you're suffering with, but just getting it off your chest and getting it out there and letting people know that you are suffering. You may be able to find out from the other person that they're also suffering as well, and they may not have been able to talk to you about it because they were feeling weak as well. So I feel like being able to talk to someone about it helps you build stronger connections with people, because that's what's happened with me as well. I've been able to build stronger connections with people because people have been very, like, not secretive, but they've been very quiet. And I feel like it's always the people who do suffer the most. They keep their emotions very intact and they don't want to. I don't know. Yeah, like I feel like they don't, like I said, they don't want to come across as weak. They don't want to come across as someone who's
So,
like. Sorry, go on, Sam. What were you going to say?
but I think initially, yes, like when you first reach out, I think that's great because you do need to reach out, don't you? But with OCD, it's such a fine line because the point you getting off your chest, before you know it, you'll be confessing everything. You know, you'll be DMs every 2 minutes. You know, talking about, oh, do you get this thought? Do you get this? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
About
That
this.
was,
So
I
it's
was
such a
on
fine
that side.
line.
Yeah, I was on that side of the spectrum on this one, where I think I struggled to, if I was feeling bad, I struggled to reach out. Because in my mind, it was also like, I know the answer. I know like what the logical or rational standpoint is on this. So what's the point even sharing, right? And so I would just keep everything to myself. I'd be like, yeah, I'll get through this on my own kind of thing, right? And so just saying, because I think there was an element that I was also, there was an element of pressure I was exerting on myself to be sensible, right? And to like have a, you know, have a clear sense of direction. I didn't want to come across as someone who didn't have a clear sense of direction. And so for me, I was on the other end. Obviously, there's one extreme where you're then constantly venting and confessing, as Sam said. And then there can be another extreme where you completely are very reclusive
Yeah,
things. So I had
it's such a
to at
fine.
times reach out almost kind of against my will, because I thought like, what am I doing to myself by not just like speaking up? So that kind of helped a little bit.
Yeah, I think with me as well. If I was going back to when I was in the grips of suffering with OCD, I'd just say to myself, I'm feeling hopeless. I'd just say allow it. If I was giving anyone advice, just to allow yourself to feel the way that you are. If you can, just try not to panic. I know that's easier said than done. Try not to fret about how you're feeling, because in the end, that's just going to add fuel to the fire. If you feel like crap, then that's absolutely fine. Like, you need to just try and get your head around the fact that for the time being, you're going to feel like crap. Essentially, you're not going to feel great. You're going to feel lonely. You're going to feel depressed. You're going to feel tired. You know, hopeless. So if you can just lean into that and just allow yourself to feel that way, I think that's such a key thing. Because Moan know this better than anyone. I used to have an allergy to discomfort. I'd demand to not feel rubbish, and that was like my real Achilles heel with my recovery. So yeah, just if you're feeling hopeless, just allow it. If you freak out, you freak out. If you're feeling hopeless, sad, depressed, allow it. I think that really helped me.
Holly, I was going to ask you a question because I know you've suffered with the taboo related themes. Spoke about a lot on our journeys, haven't we? Now, a big feeling that I had was that feeling of trapped, like when you're trapped in your own mind, especially with thoughts at unwanted times during intimacy, because it feels so taboo and it feels like you just can't possibly mention that to anyone. So, what would you say with dealing with the trapped feeling, or just well, it feels like there's no way out? How would you sort of advise people or your own experience with it?
I'd say, well, I think it's the same with any other type of theme. You've got to bring it, you've got to experience those feelings. You've got to just allow yourself to feel it, because the more you try and avoid it or try and work it out, it's going to feel even 10 times worse than it originally did. So you've just got to allow those feelings and bring it all for the ride. And like Elliot said, it's hard, it's easier said than done. But yeah, you just got to allow those feelings. And I guess, and I think one thing that helped me was when I did, going back to what I originally said, was when I found people who did suffer from taboo themes as well, because it really did help me see that, okay, I'm not the only one suffering from it. there's other people suffering from it as well. And, you know, now that I'm better than what I was when it first started, I can see so many things that I was doing wrong in my journey, like especially with avoidance as well. Avoidance was something that, looking back now, it's like I'm doing the one thing that's making me feel worse. But then in that moment, it's like it feels like the only right thing to do, because it's human nature to automatically do that. So anyone who is suffering or in the midst of it right now, just bring it for the ride, and just know that there is hope on the other side. And yeah, just experience everything. As hard as it is, you just got to allow everything to come, and it can take one day at a time. That's the important thing, one day at a time.
It is just riding out, isn't it? Because feeling, many times I felt like my head was about to explode, and that's just not the taboo related themes. That's any OCD. I'm sure every sufferer can relate to that. And you just feel like you're so desperate for a bit of relief, aren't you? Any bit of instant fix, because you feel like if I bottle this up anymore, or if I feel any more guilt, my head is going to explode. I remember messaging Rob all the time, like, my head's about to explode. What do I do? I need to sort of get off my chest. And that's why confession was so bad for me, because if I felt like I didn't confess, I generally thought my head was going to explode, or I was just going to crumble, going to just lie on the floor and cry. So yeah, allowing that to be there, you're not going to suddenly feel untrapped with a click of your fingers. It's going to take time. And there's a gradual process, isn't it? It's not a quick fix, overnight fix.
Because each time you avoid less and less, you're showing yourself that you can actually stand it. Whereas if you're constantly avoiding it and constantly trying to find a quick fix, you're going away from trying to lean into discomfort. And the one thing you got to do is just feel the discomfort and bring it all for the ride, and just show yourself like it's not as bad as my brain is making it out to be. Obviously, it's hard to see that at the time, but the more you do it each day, and over time, you will get to the other side. But it does take time. It's not a quick fix, and that's something that I learned the hard way, because I just prolonged my suffering for so long because due to avoidance. And it was
also good for frustration tolerance, isn't it? No, I know you don't want to forever. I know that, but you have to become comfortable that you might be. So it's building tolerance that even if I feel like shit, I'm going to live life regardless. I can stand these uncomfortable feelings, no matter how much I can stand them. And that quick perspective shift there, that's a big change. Rather than going, oh no, this is the worst feeling in the world. Oh no, I feel so down. I feel like there's no way out. You're changing. All right, I can stand this, although I don't like it. I'm going to then sort of work towards recovery, rather than just being really rigid and awfulizing it.
Yeah, I remember there, like a couple of years ago, I was probably at one of my lowest points, right? No, I felt so anxious. I had no sleep, awake all night, pumping anxiety. And like, I just thought, I feel like absolute crap, but I'm still going to go out. And I think I'd like a party, like one of my friends' party. And I forced myself to go out. I felt like shit. I looked like shit. And I've just forced myself to go. And because I'd done it, it was that little sort of 1% for the next time that just bit by bit got me there, got me better, right? So it's in those moments when you want to bail out, when you want to stay in your bed, when you don't want to do anything, those moments they're the massive opportunity to like change your journey and change your recovery. And I just think if you can just push yourself and not, just go towards the discomfort and you try and live your life, then you're going to give yourself a really good chance. That was a big thing for me, pushing myself.
I think, Elliot, what you said earlier as well about letting yourself feel hopeless, because one of the things that people say is that, wait, if I let myself feel hopeless, that means I'm just going to get depressed and I'm not going to be able to like see a way forward. But no, like realistically look at it. In a moment when you're feeling extremely hopeless, no amount of the other person saying that it's going to be okay, you're going to be fine, it's going to get better, it doesn't make us feel better. Like none of those things make us feel better. So the only thing that we can allow, it's the same with feeling sad, feeling anxious, feeling angry, allowing yourself to feel that way and letting that moment pass on its own. Because in that specific moment, anything you're going to try to do to get rid of it is exactly what's going to cause more suffering. You're just not going to feel great, because then you'll be like, I need to unstick this feeling. And when it won't unstick, that will make you feel even more hopeless. So letting yourself feel hopeless, first of all, in a moment when you're feeling particularly very, very low. But then the other thing is also that I think it was just yesterday, like Rob was saying to someone that, like, what makes us hopeless is that when we're comparing ourselves to other people, we're only comparing ourselves to people who are supposedly better than us in certain aspects, right? We don't ever compare ourselves to, let's say, like a homeless person or someone who is like a drug addict or someone who is struggling to eat a meal every single day. We're only comparing, like, for example, I'll be comparing myself to, I don't know, Hardy, saying that, oh my God, look, he is doing this job and he is going this place and he has a relationship and this and that. And I'll only do that. I won't look at somebody else to have a perspective of how I can be grateful for my own life. So, not in a moment when you're feeling triggered or extremely low, but like when you're feeling relatively better, do look at other perspectives as well. Do look at stories of people who have it really hard and who are going through tough things, because that kind of comparison can be helpful in seeing that the things that we are complaining about and the things that we are going through are not as bad as we think. It really can be much worse than that. So that's the other thing as well, in terms of trying to have hope for yourself and not feeling as like, oh, everybody else is better than me, I'm the only one who is on the deep end of things.
I think another thing with when I look back now, that what made me feel so hopeless was the setbacks after setbacks and relapses. So when you feel like you were making progress and you feel like you're getting somewhere, you sort of get that bit of freedom. And you might have a good couple of days, a good couple of weeks, and go, wow, I'm OCD free. And then here we go, boom, and you're slapped with another trigger, a new theme, a new thought, or a red event, false memory, whatever it may be. And I remember at that time, I go, right, I'm back to square one. All the hope's gone. Why do I even bother? You know, all these things that we tell ourselves. And then it's so easy to go back into that. Oh, OCD is the worst thing in the world. It's so unfair. Well, I've got OCD. I was getting somewhere. So I feel like it can feel even worse when you do get that glimpse of freedom, and then you're suddenly back, because OCD is gonna ramp up the heat, isn't it? It's gonna turn to try and keep you stuck. It's going to try and latch to something else and catch you off guard. So I think when you do get that tease of, you know, feeling better and staying better, and then you get slapped with something else, that can be a big challenge.
And
And that's
Sam,
also
like
high.
what you said earlier about carrying on regardless of how you feel, I'll also extend that to other things as well. So because when we're feeling hopeless, we kind of like give up. Like Elliot said, the inclination is to not go to a party if someone is inviting us, but but the good thing to do in that moment is to pick yourself up and go, even if you feel really 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 bad in that moment, right? It's the same for, I would say, demotivation, and it's the same for waiting for happiness to come to you to do something. It's the same for waiting to feel brave enough to do, let's say, an exposure. Because in all these cases, in all these are all different emotions, but the principle that we're following is the same. The belief that we're following is the same, which is I need to feel motivated, hopeful, brave, and happy to be able to do things. You make that a strict condition upon yourself, like a pre-requirement for yourself to be able to do those things. And that's the biggest issue. I did that all the time. I did that so much I can't even tell you. And that's where I ended up in an avoidant lifestyle. And I ended up in the cycle of trying to constantly wait and wait for perfect feelings to be able to do things. So, and like Harley said, I learned it the hard way. And I think that anyone who's listening to this, they might not be able to like completely snap change their behaviors into like better behaviors. They might have to learn it the hard way as well, because even if you hate it, you still don't believe it. When you're feeling really low and shitty, you still don't like these words, what I'm saying, they won't resonate with you. It's only you'll have to learn them the hard way to be able to get to that point of seeing that, okay, that's those words were true. But I think that's one of the best pieces of advice that I always give people on calls, is to do things regardless of how you feel. Regardless is the key bill word that should be on a billboard over here. Like regardless of how you feel, whether you feel low, whether you feel demotivated, whether you feel hopeless, all those things, just go and do things.
Moment, my new middle name is Regardless.
Sam Regardless Williams.
Oh. I don't know if you. Yeah, I don't know if you find it so not funny. You didn't even.
Cuts out right there. Yeah, rubbish jokes.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who was listening to the Real Talk just signed off. My joke was way better. So, yeah, I saved you guys.
I went that like.
Yeah. So, guys, any other points that you think we're missing in terms of trying to cover hopelessness and trying to cover feeling isolated and alone?
Yeah, I've got a quick one. I just think where you can just it's so hard, I know, but where you can just have a bit of like gratitude, because you know if we was all existing like 100 years ago, right, we'd be toast. Let's be honest. Like we wouldn't have much of a chance, right? We would have no chance really. Even like 50 years ago. And I'm always fascinated when like Rob and Nick post about that on the OCD recovery chat. Like, people with OCD like a few hundred years ago, they were burnt at the stake and whatever, just thought it was being really weird. And the fact we're here now in this tiny point in time with OCD, we're very lucky. And to have the steps laid out for you, if you do follow them, you've got a great chance of recovering. I don't want to reassure and say yes, you're 100% going to recover, but to be with OCD now was very, very fortunate. So if you can, just take some solace from that we're lucky to be alive right now with OCD. That's what I'd say. If you lose
What's
that? What was that?
You'll be toast if it was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I sometimes do imagine this, like someone living at, I don't know, 500 years before Christ, in 500 BC, let's say, like someone suffering from intrusive thoughts, right? I don't like, because people had to literally work for a live, like they had to manually work to get things, whether they had to hunt, whether they had to build their own houses, like whatever it was, right? They didn't have the luxury to sit in bed and be like, oh, I don't want to go out and have drinks with my friends because I don't feel up to it. Like they literally had to get off their butt to be able to carry on with their day to sustain themselves. So I sometimes I also do, I mean, think about like, if I'm not saying that people didn't have OCD back then, they did, but maybe without even knowing, I think they maybe had better tools at times, not in every sense, but maybe they had better tools to deal with it. And also like a lot of like your stoicism and early philosophies were also very present at the time. There were all these great thinkers whose works we are reading today, they were alive back then. So people could directly talk to them for advice, and I'm pretty sure those pieces of advice were very prevalent at the time as well. So I don't know. I mean, sometimes I wonder that maybe mm, that older time in some aspects was perhaps better. I think we might have way more to worry about and way more luxuries that keep us comfortable, that fuels the anxiety cycle. I don't know. I just wonder sometimes. No, I mean,
No,
there's
okay,
no
that's
answer
very.
required. This is just like a food for thought. Of course, but I'm not saying that people in the 50s and 60s who had OCD, they were, because they, I think it's like, because these were modern societies, right? These were like developed societies in the 50s and 60s, right? So obviously they had it really bad because they were getting fueled by the comforts of the modern world, but at the same time didn't have the correct treatment because those early philosophies weren't as prevalent, and you have the luxury to sit back at home. So I think that
Oh yeah,
maybe,
they wouldn't even have.
go ahead, Sam. Pardon.
Sorry, man. I said that I was going to say they wouldn't even have the resources to even like realize what they're struggling with. Whereas like that's something that we have to appreciate as well. We actually have the resources to actually realize, oh, okay, we're dealing with this, and we have the steps and the tools to potentially get better. Whereas years ago, like you said, they didn't even have time to even do any of that. Like
Yeah.
even think about getting better, let alone they're suffering with it. They don't even know what they're dealing with. So
And I think
yeah, we're very lucky.
the extremely early years of human civilization, I think maybe those, and maybe now where like awareness about OCD is going. This is just my personal opinion. I'm not like, please don't take it too hard. I might be like the most ignorant person over here, but just saying my personal opinion. I think some of the earliest years of human civilization, and maybe towards where we're going now in terms of awareness of OCD awareness. I think these are like the better times. I think the middle part where where people were pretty toast, I think. Where they were in the middle of being modern but also not having enough awareness. So I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's crazy. But just, I mean, even 20 years ago, we don't have to go back 1,000 years ago. Like 20 years ago, you couldn't really message someone with OCD. I mean, you can do that. I can pick up this, and then this call. I could drop someone a message within 5 seconds and talk about OCD all night. All right. Now, you imagine that you're talking 20, 25 years ago. I mean, how would you have contacted someone? A, how would you know they've had OCD? And B, how would you even know what to talk about, or whether you talk about the thoughts? It's just, how do you find that person? So to have this community now, I mean, is absolutely incredible. Look at the Facebook group, like what's it,
Imagine
18,000?
remember like when Omegle was a thing? Like I don't know if you guys remember,
Yeah.
but imagine people
Yeah.
going on Omegle trying to find an OCD sufferer. It would be like the worst
Yeah.
possible recipe ever.
I'm at a premium membership there.
Yeah. Anyway, so any last points that Sam or Hardy you want to give, or do you guys think you've covered everything you want to?
I would just say again, if you are feeling hopeless, if you are feeling a bit lonely, like we've said, all of us have said in this call, bring it all for the ride. It's easier said than done, but at the end of the day, there is hope at the end of the tunnel. It's not going to be an easy ride. It's not going to be a quick fix. It will take time. I know a lot of people don't like hearing that, but it will take time. But at the end of the day, your future self is thanking you, and you just got to keep going on, keep pushing forward, and yeah, you'll eventually get there. It's hard work, but you'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
I do tend to round up my videos with hope, because I don't want to just say it all the time, but it's so important that there is so much hope. There really is. I mean, us four here have all been in your shoes. If you're watching this video, when you feel like there is no way out, there's nowhere to turn, you feel like no one understands you, there is really so much hope. Okay, us four wouldn't be here making this video if there wasn't.
Yeah, we'd probably be on this video crying with each other. It would be like a mass crying segment over here.
Just
OCD.
reassure.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It would be reassurance fest over here for sure. Anyway, guys, thanks for being here. I think good topic. And if you guys have people watching, if you guys have any like suggestions, please send them our way, and we would love to cover those topics as well.
If
Have
you're
a
still
good,
watching that.
if you're still watching by this point. But
Probably not.
thanks for being here, everyone, and have a good rest of the night, evening, whatever it is.
Have a good
Bye.
Take care, guys. Bye bye.
Take care.